2 years after an April Fool's prank gone wrong, 5 friends reunite for a weekend getaway. However, someone from their past seeks revenge and vows to eliminate them one by one. During the April 1st spring fling dance, friends Sam, Barbra, Alana, Miles, Ashley, and Mikki dance in the middle of the party along with the other students. Later, while taking a break, Barbra pours an alcoholic beverage into her friends' drinks, and Sam asks her to be more discreet because she doesn't want them to get caught. Then, the DJ asks the couples to return to the dance floor, so Ashley slowly dances with Carter. Moments later, he asks her to meet him in the restroom so they can have some privacy. Even though she pretends she doesn't want to go along with the plan, the teen returns to her friends and tells them she's about to do it. The friends believe she'll do the deed with Carter, but she jokingly swears none of the sort is happening. Then, Sam says Ashley was right about her boyfriend being a good guy, and the latter arrogantly proclaims that she was able to get him to like her. In the empty restroom, Carter pulls the teen into a stall, startling her. Meanwhile, DJ flirts with Sam, and her friends give him a hard time for shooting his shot. Concurrently, Carter pulls away from his kiss with Ashley to ask her if he should go get his contraceptive so they can do the deed. After he leaves, the teen excitedly unzips her dress in anticipation of his return. Minutes later, the stall door suddenly opens and the embarrassed student realizes Carter planned the prank on her with her friends. While Sam takes a video on her phone and the others laugh at her misery, the guy whom she thought was her boyfriend half-heartedly apologizes and reveals they've been planning the prank for weeks. After Ashley runs away, one of Carter's friends points out how angry she seems. However, the friends counter that she'll get over it quickly, especially since she's usually the one who's pulling practical jokes on other people. Sam adds that in a few weeks, she'll be the one showing people the video and laughing along with the rest of them. When they return to the dance, they find that Ashley really did leave the party, worrying Miles. So the rest of the group assures her that their friend's alright because she can take a joke. Later that night, the inebriated Carter excuses himself to the restroom. Suddenly, the vengeful Ashley emerges from a stall and points a gun at him. He doesn't take her seriously and thinks she's joking, so she pulls the trigger and shoots him several times, ending his life. The loud gunshots ring throughout the auditorium, and even though the chaperone tells the students to get down on the floor and take cover, the panicked teens rush out of the building. Later, Sam watches as the chaperone informs Carter's mother, Mrs. Fisher, about the unfortunate news regarding her son. 2 years later, as Sam rides the plane back to her hometown, she answers a call from Alana and explains that she isn't sure whether she can make it to the girls' trip that weekend. That evening, her brother tells her that Mrs. Fisher dropped by the other day to offer her condolences for their mother's passing. She asks if the woman seemed okay, and he says she looked alright and that she asked about the girls and their plans for the summer. Then, Sam expresses her disdain for neighbors and relatives showing up and telling her how wonderful her late mother was, even though she knows how much they hated her. She shares that her friends are asking her to join them on the trip to Burnt Bridge Lake and that she's tired of being the only one who wants to talk about what happened 2 years ago. So the man tells his sister that unless she wants to go to the wake and deal with their overbearing relatives, she's better off unwinding and catching up with her friends because it might do her some good. Sam worries all she'll think about is how strange it is that Ashley isn't there because she's locked up inside a padded room in a psychiatric hospital. When the man mentions that it might not be a bad thing because the friends may finally talk about the incident, she doesn't even think the topic will ever come up. Eventually, the brother says even if she ends up having a bad time during the trip, maybe her mere presence will cheer her friends up, and that could be her one good deed this summer. Later, she calls Alana and Barbra to tell them that she's going. When she asks if they'll fit in the vehicle, the friend informs her that they will because Mikki's arriving at the house tonight and will meet them there tomorrow. Meanwhile, Mikki takes the key from outside the house and uses it to open the front door. Then, she plays music on the radio and dances around the living room. Unbeknownst to the woman, someone's watching her from outside the window. Later that night, Mikki chops vegetables in the kitchen, but she's unaware that the stranger just walked in through the unlocked front door. When she hears a noise, she thinks it's Alana playing a prank on her, so she goes to check. She sees the open door and closes it, wondering if she left left it ajar. However, when she returns to the kitchen, she realizes the knife is no longer on the cutting board. Suddenly, the killer, draped in a black hooded cloak, stabs Mikki's head from behind, causing one of her eyes to pop out of the socket, ending her life. Then, the murderer loads the victim's bag back in her vehicle and drives the car elsewhere to make it appear as though she never arrived at the house. The next day, the friends pick Sam up and they stop by a gas station to buy supplies for the weekend. Alana tries to use her phone, but she hears the ear-piercing tone from an emergency service alert notification. Before heading into the store, Sam sees a homeless man holding up a sign. Meanwhile, officers McLaughlin and Cunningham receive a report regarding a possible prison break from the nearby psychiatric hospital. Concurrently, the sympathetic Sam calls the homeless man over and they hand him food and some cash. To show his gratitude, he gives the woman a special coin a grateful soldier gave him while he was on active duty in the Middle East. While making their way back to the car, Barbra answers a call from her mother who informs her that someone escaped from the psychiatric hospital. She tells her friends, so Sam assures her that Burnt Bridge Lake is the safest place for them to be in right now. Concurrently, Officer McLaughlin radios for any additional information regarding the prison break since he and his partner are the only cops assigned to 20 miles of Forest Road. Soon, the group arrives at the house and Alana wonders why the key isn't in the usual hiding spot. However, she sees that the door is unlocked, finds the key on the entryway floor, and thinks her brother must have left it there the last time he was at the house. In the kitchen, they wonder where Mikki is, because she was supposed to have arrived hours before they did. Then, they reminisce about the last time they were at the house all together and when Mikki and Sam got lost in the woods because they were inebriated. Suddenly, they hear a knock on the door and think their friends finally arrived. However, it's the two police officers stopping by to remind them that campfires aren't allowed for the time being. Before the cops leave, the women ask them for more details regarding the prison break. So Officer McLaughlin tells them they don't have much information but that the situation's nothing to worry about. Later, Miles shares that it feels weird not having Ashley there with them. Relieved, Sam says she feels the same way, then admits that she feels guilty because people treated them like victims after the incident. Yet here they are 2 years later on a fun weekend trip in the mountains. That afternoon, Alana and Miles join the others by the lake after spending a few minutes in the sauna. Then they play Truth or Dare, and Barbra asks Alana if she's seen her ex-boyfriend Chris since coming back from college. Even though the woman insists she told him to stop contacting her, her friends don't believe her. Seconds later, Miles reveals she finally came out to her pastor father. When it's Sam's turn, Miles asks which friend she trusts the least in case an axe murderer attacks them. She answers Barbra, much to the woman's surprise. Then, Sam asks the blonde friend how she feels about what happened 2 years ago. Barbra says she tries not to think about it at all, and when asked why, admits that she doesn't think it'd help if she did. Unbeknownst to the group, the killer lurks behind the bushes and spies on them. Later, the cloaked intruder enters a bedroom and steals one pillowcase. That evening, Barbra notices Sam's sour mood, so the latter finally expresses her disappointment that her friends are actively avoiding talking about the incident. She adds that it seems she's the only person who feels guilty being there. Fed up, Barbra says not everyone copes the way the woman does because other people just want to feel normal again. She adds that Sam goes around trying to fix other people's problems even if they never asked her to. Hurt and annoyed, the redhead storms back inside the house and stays in her room. Seconds later, Barbra apologizes to Miles and Alana for her behavior. Suddenly, Sam hits her with a pillow and knocks her down to the floor. A scuffle ensues, so their friends try to separate the feuding women. Realizing they acted like brats, the pals reconcile by having a group pillow fight in the middle of the living room. Meanwhile, the cops happen upon Mikki's abandoned vehicle in the middle of the road. While the man checks the car, his partner radios the station regarding what they found. Suddenly, the cloaked killer appears from behind Officer Cunningham and slashes her throat with a knife. When Officer McLaughlin returns to the cop car, he finds his partner missing. Then, as he turns around, the attacker hacks his hand clean off and walks away. Concurrently, the friends hear a noise outside, so they head to the front door to check. To their surprise, they find Alana's ex-boyfriend Chris and his friend Adam. Despite the women telling them to leave, the man insists he just wants to talk to Alana for a few minutes and promises they'll leave right after. So the pair heads upstairs to the bedroom for some privacy. Meanwhile, the killer menacingly waits outside the house while wielding a machete. Minutes later, Adam apologizes for crashing their party because he thought his friend was invited. To defuse the tension, the man asks the ladies if they want to smoke illegal substances with him. Barbra rudely declines, prompting Adam to choose to wait for Chris outside. After he leaves, Sam says she feels bad for how they treated the man, so she joins him outside and makes small talk. He says he's sorry for crashing the party, but she apologizes for how she and her friends reacted to him. Then she tells him to head back inside for a drink, and he says he'll join them after he finishes his spliff. Moments later, the killer appears behind Adam and slices him in half with a machete. When the couple comes back downstairs, Chris heads outside to look for his friend. However, even after circling the property, he returns inside and says he can't find Adam anywhere. So Barbra and Sam check outside the front door and see that the man is missing. Then they inform the others, and their concern multiplies, especially since there are now two people missing, Mikki and Adam. After they lock the doors, the confused man says his friend's probably in the woods relieving himself. Barbra calls her mother and she learns that the emergency service announcement was a false alarm, much to their relief. So Chris heads back out to search for his friend. Meanwhile, the murderer fills the empty pillowcase with rocks. Minutes later, the man finds Adam's organs on the ground. As he crouches to take a closer look, the killer bludgeons him with a rock-filled pillowcase, ending his life. Inside the house, Sam tells the others that she's thinking about asking Adam out on a date because she'll be in town for the summer, and he seems like a nice guy. Suddenly, they hear a knock on the door and Alana answers. When she sees who's on the other side, she quickly runs back to the living room and tells her friends to run and hide. The masked killer breaches the front door, prompting the women to scatter for hiding spots all over the house. The tormentor checks upstairs, but Sam silently waits under the bed while Barbra locks herself in the bathroom. Meanwhile, Alana tells Miles they need to come out of the sauna and run as far away as they can. However, after her friend sprints off into the distance, the traumatized brunette remains inside the sauna. Eventually, the murderer, whom the woman believes is Ashley, pushes the victim's face onto the hot sauna rocks until she perishes. Because she heard the attacker leave the house, Sam fetches Barbra and they head downstairs to lock the door. In the living room, the redhead wonders if what's happening to them has anything to do with Ashley. In the woods, the murderer catches Alana, lifts her off the ground, and impales her head on a tree branch. Just as the remaining survivors are about to open the front door and run to the car, they hear a noise on the other side. To their horror, they find Officer McLaughlin with a missing hand asking for help. Terrified, the women run up the stairs, and the murderer slices the cop's head off with a machete. When the tormentor corners Sam, she apologizes to Ashley for what they did. Then, Barbra comes to her friend's rescue and attacks the masked intruder. They manage to fight the killer off and they run back downstairs. However, the murderer catches Barbra, pins her to the floor, and cuts up her face with a box cutter, before finally ending her life with a knife through the head. Meanwhile, Sam sneaks to the dead cop's body and grabs his gun. When the killer runs at her with a knife, the woman fires the weapon. She orders the person to take off their mask, and to her surprise, sees that it's Mrs. Fisher, Carter's mother. Sam asks why, so the deranged woman says she couldn't stand watching her and her friends living their happy lives when they didn't even have the decency to show up to her son's funeral. When Mrs. Fisher says she's terrified of dying, the sympathetic woman lowers her gun. However, when the killer spitefully proclaims that she should have killed Sam during her mother's wake, the survivor shoots her in the head. Minutes later, the woman tosses the homeless man's coin to the ground. Then she watches the sunrise over the lake.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this, turn on notifications and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.